In his first letter, the Apostle Peter tells us to, quote, always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you, unquote. When you share your faith in Christ with others, you'll discover that there are some basic repeated challenges that people like to bring up. One is the Bible valid? Another is Jesus really the only way to heaven? And one that wasn't really too often heard until about a couple of decades ago was just even questions on the existence of God. But what many consider the most difficult challenge that skeptics pose is this. If God is all-loving and all-powerful, why is there evil in the world? In light of Peter's insistence that we always be ready to give a reasonable answer for why we believe what we do, it's wise to prepare some answers to these oft-encountered challenges. Now, it's that last one, and the problem of evil, that we're going to deal with now. The difficulty in answering this oft-heard challenge is twofold. First, while the challenge is quickly stated, answering it can take a while. It can't be reduced to a simple, clever retort. And second, the answer requires that the one who hears it listen honestly and process the explanation. Die-hard skeptics are unlikely to do that because they don't want to believe. No, they just want to buff the shine on their unbelief. It turns out that the existence of evil isn't a problem just for Christians. Every religion and philosophy, including atheism, has to deal with it. While some systems of thought provide a more satisfying answer than others, the solution that's provided by Christianity is the most satisfying because it's the most internally consistent. Now, what I mean is the answer to the problem of evil given by historic Orthodox Christianity logically flows from what it believes about God and creation. In fact, a Christian worldview expects the existence of evil while maintaining belief in an all-powerful and all-loving God because the origin of evil is described in the Bible. Now, the technical term for dealing with this issue is called a Theodicy, a vindication of God's goodness and his justice in the face of the existence of evil. And that is about as technical as I'm going to be in this video. I intend this to be a theologically simple, layman's answer to the problem of evil. Entire books have been written, complex theological essays by people way smarter than little old me, giving complex, elaborate explanations on how the existence of evil is not incompatible with the God of the Bible. My goal here is to provide the average person a way to hopefully move those who raise the problem of evil as an objection to Christianity to see that there is an answer that, if seriously considered, is satisfying because it's consistent with what we really believe about God and creation. Now, first, when challenged by someone who says, if God is all-loving and all-powerful, as you Christians believe, why is there evil in the world? One approach is to ask them, are you saying that you think evil is real? Can you tell me what you mean by evil? What is it? Now, that's likely to make them pause, maybe a bit baffled, because they assume that everyone knows what evil is. However they respond, ask them what standard they use to call something evil or bad. You see, the force of their entire argument is that evil is real and that everyone ought to agree that it's wrong, that it's bad. But hold on. Where does that standard they assume everyone ought to agree on come from? If there's no God, which they're posing this challenge assumes, if there's no God and we're all just, biological machines, then there is, in fact, no ultimate morality. There is no right and wrong, no evil. There's just, electrical impulses flying across synapses in brains, chemical reactions producing movements in physical organs like tongues and hands and feet. Few are the skeptics who go that far as to accept that we live in an amoral universe because it's just not a part of the human psyche. Morality is intuitive. It's built into our soul because no matter how broken, we still bear the image of our Creator. People may differ over time and place on the incidentals of what is just and right, but all agree that there is a justice and a rightness, and that there is something inside us that chooses to do wrong, even when we know that it is wrong. It's called the conscience. So, in summary of this first response to the problem of evil, the critic who raises the problem of evil can only do so by first admitting that, well, evil is a problem. If there's no God, as the challenge is usually used to assert, then there's no evil. So why does the skeptic even bring it up? Now, once getting this far, I like to totally own the problem of evil by saying something like, the existence of evil is something that I've wrestled with. I believe evil is real, and the Bible has both the best explanation for it and the best solution to it. Now, the next step is to quickly run through some Bible basics. And to do that, you have to ask the person that you're talking to let you explain, because there's an internal consistency that needs to be given. If they interrupt, that consistency gets lost. Now, the story goes like this. God created a perfect world in which the first humans were without sin. These first people were different from everything else that God had made in that they were created in His image. They had rational thoughts, emotions, and will. They could make real choices. That ability to choose was essential because their highest purpose, what they were created for, was to have a real relationship with God, one marked by the most intimate kind of love. But for love to be real, it has to be free. It can't be coerced, forced, pre-programmed. The great risk in choice is the potential to make a decision to not do what is best and right, but rather to commit an act of evil. Now, how long those first humans remained in loving communion with God, we have no idea. But at some point, they decided to exercise their power to choose and backed out of their relationship with God. Since that's what they were created for, and they had forsaken it, everything began to malfunction, including the world that God had given them to lead. And that's the world we live in, a broken world of human beings living for themselves rather than God. That's the evil that the skeptic has such a hard time with. While we believe that God originally created the world and people, He did not create the world and people to be this way, where people lie, cheat, steal, commit horrific atrocities. Humans chose this when they turned from God. Now, we admit that this is not the best of all possible worlds. If there was even one less crime, one less case of abuse or corruption, the world would be a better place. So no, this is not the best of all possible worlds, but this is the best way to the best of all possible worlds. And it is because it provides a way for people to come back into an intimate love relationship with God without violating their ability to choose. Being human means being able to make real choices. Though we may have turned from God, He has made a way for us to turn back to Him. His desire to be in a loving relationship with us has not changed. And this is what the gospel of Jesus Christ is all about. Adam and Eve made a fateful choice to turn from God at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Because of the work that Christ has done, we can turn back to God at the tree of His cross. Now, once you explain all of that, make sure they understand that evil is the consequence of a good gift that God gave to us, the power to choose. Because love is not real without choice. And then ask how things could be any different than they are while we remain human in a meaningful way, able to make choices. Now, they will likely say that God ought to stop evil. If He's all-powerful and all-loving, He ought to put an end to it. So ask them to give an example. And they will inevitably say that, well, He should stop rape, abuse, human trafficking, addiction, crime. Suppose this. For God to stop evil, as you propose, He would have to take away the power to choose. Think about that. If someone pulled a trigger on a handgun pointed at an 8-year-old child, and God snatched the bullet out of the air, did that person who pulled the trigger really make a choice? If someone intentionally ran a red light at a busy intersection in an attempt to commit suicide, but God caused the car to soar over the cross traffic, was a choice really made? Choices are real only when they set in motion a sequence of events that aim at some conclusion, some resolution. If God thwarted every choice to do evil, people would stop making choices, period. They would lay down and die. We can't even conceive of a world like that. Well, the critic might say, what about things like earthquakes and famine and disease? Why doesn't God stop natural disasters? Well, the opening tale of creation in the book of Genesis says that God gave dominion of earth to humanity. When they turned from God, the evil they introduced infected all of creation. Earth is not the way that it was meant to be, and it's mankind's fault. A good portion of disease in the world today, that's the result of evil choices distorting and perverting the environment. Famine is as often as not an issue of economic choices of corrupt governments. An underlying complication with many who use the problem of evil argument to refute Christianity is their unstated assumption that, well, if I was God, I would, and then, fill in the blank with whatever they would or wouldn't do as they pass judgment on God for doing or not doing what he does. Now, we don't maintain that God is only all-loving and all-powerful. We believe that he's also all-wise and all-good. His justice is perfect. And, this is crucial to all of this, God is eternal. He stands outside of time, seeing the long-range consequences not only for every decision that is made, but the contingencies for every potential decision. The skeptic is time-bound, able only to see this moment, the tiny slice of reality that they inhabit. They have no idea what a decision they make today may bear on the lives of millions generations from now. From their supremely limited perspective, if they were God, they would cure Aunt Liz's cancer. But they just put Aunt Liz in the car that 3 years from now runs a red light and kills the pregnant mother of a baby that was going to discover the cancer for all. Now, of course, that's a hypothetical, but it no less gets the point across. We can't say what we would do if we were God because we're not. We do not possess all the alls that make him God. If we did, we would do exactly what he does. Now, listen, so much more could be said by way of a Theodicy, but that ought to be enough for most of the challenges that you'll hear on the problem of evil.